gentlemen, welcome back to the UT Tyler Variety Show. Today's host, as voted for by the people, is here to teach you a little something about drums. So, if you're ready to gain some knowledge, here's your host, Jonathan French.
Hello, and welcome to the Drum Show. This is going to be a very interesting and purposeful show. I can promise you that. Even though most of you won't use what I teach you here today, any day for the remainder of your life, it's still interesting to learn and it's still good to know. This is a drum. Specifically, it's a tom-tom. There are many different kinds of drums, but you get the point. Drums have two heads. The top head, which is the batter head, and the bottom head, which is called the resonant head. These heads often have to be changed out because of destructive use towards them, or they just wear out their lifespan. When you replace the head, there is this very specific procedure that you have to follow in order to make sure that it's done correctly and safely. If not, you can break the head or the drum in many different ways. And that's no fun for anybody, especially not the drum. So let's start with removing the drum head. The first step, this is a drum key. This is what you use to unscrew the screws. The first step is to start at the very top and unscrew one full rotation. Then you want to go to the screw that is exactly opposite the screw that you've already manipulated. So you'll go from the top to the bottom, one full turn. The next step is to go to the top right. And the reason for this is because you want to do it in a star pattern. If you don't do it in a star pattern, it will apply too much pressure to one spot of the head. Too much pressure equals an explosion, which in this case is a rip in the head, which is a very loud and very scary, almost 3 times as loud as popping a balloon. We don't want that. I know I don't want that, and I've done it before. So take it from me. You don't want that to happen. Let's go to the top right screw here, one full rotation. Each rotation has to be equivalent. Otherwise, there's too much pressure in one spot. Go from the top right to the bottom left, one full rotation. And then go to the top left, one full rotation. And then to the bottom right, one full rotation. The ultimate goal here is to use the key to get the screws loose enough to unscrew with your hands. Once they are all loose enough to unscrew with your hands, you can just unscrew them all the way with your hands. And then there's no danger of pressure being applied because the rim isn't pushed all the way down by the screws. So we keep repeating this process. Then to the bottom, and then to the top right, and then to the bottom left, and then to the top left, and then to the bottom right. I'll check them again. All screws are loose enough to be loosened with the hand. So now you can finish up by just unscrewing the rest of them without the key. And this makes things go by a lot quicker. You can use the key if you would prefer. And honestly, what I usually do, which is what I'm about to do here in a second, is, well, I'll do that when I put the other head back on. It's not important right now. Like I said, too much pressure in one spot can break the drum head, and that applies to putting a new one on or taking one off. If you unscrew, let's say, the top screw all the way and leave the bottom screw screwed in all the way, then basically what you're doing is stretching the head and it will break. And the same thing goes for when you're putting it back on. It's a very tedious process. So now all screws are out. Now you take the rim off. This is the rim. And I could take all of the screws out and lay them out individually, but for the case, or for the sake of saving time and also for being convenient, I won't. And then here's the drum head, the old one. So now we're going to take a break and hear a word from our sponsors, and when we come back, we'll put one back on.
When life gives us memories, we should always keep them safe.
I do.
The memory box for yesterdays and tomorrows.
basically a tom-tom. And now we're going to put on a replacement head. So the process for putting on a drum head is basically the same as removing a drum head, except it's entirely in reverse. There are a few differences that are very minor that affect the sound of the drum after the head has been installed. And this is where tuning the drum comes into play, as well as replacing the drum head. Yes, drums have tuning. Little known fact, they aren't just things you beat on. So the first step is to place the head back onto the drum. It should fit tightly. And then you want to take the rim and align all of the screws with the holes in these, which are called drum casings. Once you've done that, the first step is to make sure that every screw is inside the hole that it's going to be put into. Now every screw is inside the hole at least a little bit. Now this is where things get a little bit different than it is when you remove the drum head. The first thing you want to do is take the key and just spin it. That's not in there, is it? Yeah, it is. Cool. Spin it all the way around, and then once you start to feel a little bit of resistance from the screw, which you will, it'll go from being very easy to turn to being slightly tighter. Then you just kind of throw it and keep going until it stops like that. Do the same now in the star pattern that you used when you were removing the head before. If you do not use this star pattern, you will break the drum head. It will scare you. It will not be fun. Don't do it. So here we go. We're going to keep doing this. And if you want, this kind of speeds it up. And what this ensures basically is that the same amount of turning is done to each screw to, once again, preserve the balance of pressure around the drum head. And if you do it like this, as soon as it stops spinning, that guarantees that it's the same as the rest of them. And then you do it. I know I'm not doing it in the star pattern because I just forgot, but honestly, the star pattern is the most important when there is pressure being applied, and right now I'm just securing the rim in place. There's very little, if any, change of pressure going on to the drum head. Now, the rim is in place, but the head is still very loose. It doesn't even sound like a drum. It sounds like you're beating on a plastic trash can, which could be used as a drum if you really wanted to, but I mean, it's not a drum. So now, let's start at the top. Same process. One full rotation. Now you go to the bottom. Another full rotation. Top right. One full rotation. Bottom left. One full rotation. Top left. One full rotation, bottom right, one full rotation. As you can see, already it's starting to sound more like a drum than a trash can. It still doesn't sound exactly like a drum, and it definitely doesn't sound like the way I would want it to sound. If I take it off the table, you can hear the sound a little bit better. It's very deep. It has a lot of resonance. I don't really want it to have a lot of resonance. So we're going to do the same process again. One full rotation on the top, one full rotation on the bottom, one full rotation on the top right, one full rotation on the bottom left, one full rotation on the top left, one full rotation on the bottom right. Let's listen to the sound again and notice the higher pitch of the drum after just one full rotation to each screw. There's a huge difference there between that one full turn in every screw. And that's why it's so important to know what you're doing, because if you turn it too many times, like I said, you're going to have to change your pants. So it sounds pretty good, and as you can see, turning it just even a half rotation on two screws changes the sound. So I'll do one more circuit here. And honestly, it doesn't matter which side you go to, left or right, when you do the corners, as long as you do the opposite after each screw. The drum head is now firmly secure, and it sounds exactly like a drum. And that is how you change a drum head. So, thank you very much for joining me. I hope you learned something interesting. Rock on.